Garrett Kane came to Coal Creek Valley with $47, two children who just lost their mother, and a German shepherd who refused to forget his training. He thought he was running from the past. Ranger stopped at a broken floorboard in a farmhouse that shouldn't have secrets. Beneath it lay the truth Rebecca had hidden to protect them. Truth doesn't ask permission to be found. The funeral had been 3 weeks ago. Garrett still felt the weight of the flag they'd handed him. Folded tight, crisp edges, the kind of precision that meant nothing when the person you loved was gone. Rebecca hadn't served. She'd never worn the uniform. But the cancer had been a war all the same, and she'd fought it the way Garrett had been trained to fight. With discipline, with silence, with a refusal to let fear show in front of the children. She'd lost anyway. Now Garrett stood at the iron gates of the Blackwood estate, snow hammering down from a sky the color of old concrete. His breath clouded in front of his face. His hands were shoved deep into the pockets of his olive field jacket, the one with the worn elbows and the faint smell of gun oil that never quite washed out. Behind the gate, men in black coats were throwing his life into the snow. A lamp his grandmother had given them. Shattered on the driveway, a box of the twins' books, spilled open pages fluttering in the wind like dying birds. A framed photo of Rebecca. The glass cracked in a jagged line across her smile. Garrett didn't bend to pick it up. His knees were shaking too hard. The humiliation burned behind his ribs, hot and corrosive, but he kept his face still. He'd learned that in Kandahar. How to keep your face still when everything inside you was screaming. Emma stood beside him, 8 years old, her small hand wrapped around the handle of an overstuffed duffel bag. She was crying without sound, the way children cry when they've learned that crying doesn't change anything. Owen stood on Garrett's other side, same age, same dark hair, same gray-blue eyes that looked too old for a child's face. He wasn't crying. He was staring at the gate with his jaw clenched, trying to look braver than he was. Ranger stood in front of them all. The German shepherd's ears were pinned forward. His tail was stiff. His body was a wall of muscle and loyalty between the children and the man who'd cast them out. Harrison Blackwood stood on the far side of the gate, 62 years old, silver hair combed perfectly despite the storm. Black wool coat that looked like it cost more than Garrett's truck. Gloved hands clasped behind his back. 2 security guards flanked him, hands resting on holstered sidearms. Garrett knew the type. He'd served with men who held their guns the same way. Calm, confident, ready to escalate if the moment called for it. "Garrett," Harrison said. His voice was sharp as the frost. "This arrangement was temporary. You and the children may collect your things, but your permission to stay here has ended." Garrett took 1 step forward. Ranger followed. A low, thunderous growl rose from his chest. "Harrison," Garrett said quietly, "Rebecca's funeral was 3 weeks ago. The kids haven't even finished grieving. We need time." Harrison's expression never softened. "You need stability," he said, "and clearly you cannot provide it. You have no income, no home, no certainty. My daughter is gone, Garrett. You are not taking my grandchildren down with you." Emma buried her face into Garrett's coat. Tears soaked through the fabric. Owen stared up at Harrison with that clenched jaw, trying so hard not to break. Garrett laid a hand on each of their shoulders, grounding himself through their weight, their warmth, their trembling grief. "This isn't stability," Garrett said. "This is cruelty." Harrison nodded toward the guards. "Escort them off the property." The gate buzzed, locks disengaged with a harsh metallic clank. The wind seemed to roar louder as the gate swung open. The guards stepped out, forming a wall of black uniforms and stern eyes. Ranger stood directly in front of Garrett, lowering his stance, shoulders rising, a warning. The guards hesitated. Garrett rested a hand lightly on Ranger's neck. "It's okay, boy," he whispered. Though nothing about this moment was okay. One guard approached, older, gray stubble. He'd been a cop once, Garrett could tell, the way he moved, the way he kept his hands visible. "Sir," the guard said, "let's keep this calm. We don't want to upset the kids." Garrett nearly laughed. Bitter, painful, but the knot in his chest made the sound die before it formed. "You're a little late for that," Garrett said. The guard glanced down at Ranger, reassessing whether approaching was a good idea. Ranger didn't move, didn't blink, didn't break eye contact. Garrett gave a sharp whistle. Ranger reluctantly backed up a step, though his growl didn't ease. Harrison's voice echoed across the storm. "Take your things and go, Garrett. Raven's Pass is no longer your home." Home. The word twisted like wire in Garrett's throat. Rebecca had grown up here. She'd run through these halls as a child, danced under the courtyard lights as a teenager, stood beneath the birch trees with Garrett the night she told him she was pregnant. This place held every good memory he had of her, and now it was pushing them out into the snow like they were nothing. The guards waited until Garrett gathered the scattered boxes. He guided the children to the truck, a 2008 Ford F-150 with rust spots on the wheel wells and a cracked windshield he'd been meaning to fix for 2 years. Ranger jumped into the back seat, positioned himself between the twins, shielding them from the world outside. When Garrett shut the door, the muffled sound of Emma's sobs pierced through his chest like shrapnel. He looked once more at Harrison, standing there in his expensive coat, warm, untouched by the storm. "You promised Rebecca you'd protect her family," Garrett said. Harrison didn't blink. "I am protecting them." Garrett shook his head. "You're protecting your pride." With that, he climbed into the driver's seat and started the engine. Snowflakes streaked across the windshield like white sparks. The wipers scraped across the glass with a rhythmic squeak that felt too loud in the silence. As the truck pulled away, Garrett watched in the rearview mirror as Harrison turned his back without watching them go, disappearing into the warm glow of the estate, the gates shrinking behind them until they vanished completely. Every breath Garrett took burned, scraping against the grief lodged in his lungs. Every mile felt like a step farther from Rebecca, from the life he'd thought they would build together. "Dad," Owen's voice broke the silence. Small, uncertain. "Where are we going now?" Garrett stared ahead at the empty road, the storm swallowing the mountains on either side. He forced his voice to stay steady. "We're going somewhere safe, somewhere quiet." "Are we going to be okay?" Emma whispered. Ranger placed his head gently on her lap. She stroked his ears with shaky fingers. Garrett didn't answer right away. The truth was heavy, brutal. $47, no job, no plan. But he wouldn't frighten them. Not now, not when they'd already lost so much. "We're going to be okay," he said finally, though he felt anything but. "We still have each other." In the rearview mirror, Ranger's amber eyes met his own, steady, unflinching, as if saying, "I'm here. I'll keep them safe, keep you safe." Garrett exhaled slowly, letting that be enough for now. The storm deepened. The road narrowed as it led toward Coal Creek Valley, toward the only place left for them, toward the only place that might still take them in. The drive took 4 hours. 4 hours of white knuckles on the steering wheel, of squinting through the blur of wind-driven snow, of listening to the twins breathing in the back seat, sometimes steady, sometimes hitching with quiet sobs. Ranger didn't sleep. He sat upright the whole way, watching the road, watching the trees, watching everything. The radio crackled in and out, mostly static, occasionally a weather report predicting another 6 inches by morning, a warning to stay off the roads. Garrett kept driving. They passed through a town called Silver Falls, population 800 according to the faded sign, a gas station, a diner with a neon sign that said Maze, a church with a white steeple. Garrett pulled into the gas station. $47 wouldn't last long, but the truck needed fuel. He pumped $12 worth, enough to reach Coal Creek and maybe drive around a little once they got there. Inside the station, a man behind the counter looked up from a hunting magazine. Mid-60s, flannel shirt, suspicious eyes that softened slightly when he saw the kids through the window. "Storm's getting worse," the man said. "Yeah," Garrett replied. "You got chains for those tires?" "No," the man studied him for a moment, then reached under the counter and pulled out a pair of tire chains. Old, rusted at the edges, but functional. "Take these," the man said. "Bring them back when the snow clears. No charge." Garrett hesitated. "I don't—" "You got kids," the man interrupted, "and you're driving into the valley in a blizzard. Don't be stupid. Take the chains." Garrett took them. "Thank you." The man nodded, went back to his magazine. Outside, Garrett fitted the chains to the rear tires. His hands were numb by the time he finished. Emma watched from the window, her breath fogging the glass. Owen had fallen asleep against Ranger's side. Back on the road, the truck's tires crunched over packed snow with a steadier rhythm. The chains helped, but the visibility was still hell. Garrett's mind drifted. Afghanistan, 2009. A night mission outside Kandahar. He'd been a lieutenant then, young, too confident. They'd been clearing a compound. He'd made the call to breach the east door instead of the west. 3 men died when the IED went off. He still saw their faces sometimes, in the moment between waking and sleeping, in the reflection of windows when the light hit wrong. Ranger's paw touched his leg. Garrett blinked, focused. The road, the snow, the present. "Yeah," Garrett whispered. "I'm here." The dog settled back into the seat. When the farmhouse finally emerged from the fog, it looked less like a home and more like a memory someone had tried to bury. The roof sagged in the middle, shingles torn away by years of storms. One shutter hung crooked. A porch step was missing entirely. The surrounding fields were blanketed in snow, untouched except for a single set of deer tracks that vanished near the barn. Garrett parked the truck and stepped into the biting wind. His boots sank deep into the snow. He closed his eyes for a moment, steadying the ache pulsing behind his temples. "We'll make it work," he whispered to himself. "We always do." Ranger leapt out first. Landing with a soft thud, he lifted his head high, sniffing the air with sharp, deliberate breaths. The fur along his spine prickled, a warning sign Garrett had learned to trust long before he trusted himself. "Dad," Owen asked softly as he stepped out, his breath rising in thin white clouds. "Is this it?" "It's just for now," Garrett said. "We'll fix it up. It'll be warm, safe." But even as the words left his mouth, he wasn't sure he believed them. Inside the farmhouse was darker than the storm outside. The air carried the scent of mold, cold earth, old timber. The floorboards creaked under each step. A draft pushed through cracked window frames. The ceiling above the living room dipped as if carrying more weight than it could bear. Emma stood in the doorway, hugging her coat tighter. "Mom wouldn't like this place," she said. Garrett knelt in front of her. "Your mom would like that we're together, that we're safe for the night, and tomorrow we'll make it better, one step at a time." Emma nodded, though her eyes remained fixed on the broken corner of the room where wallpaper peeled in long curling strips. Ranger moved ahead, inspecting the house with practiced precision. His paws carried him room to room, sniffing, circling, then returning to a single warped floorboard near where a fireplace once stood. He pushed his nose against it, whining low. Garrett frowned. "Ranger, leave it. Probably a raccoon nest." Ranger didn't move. He pressed his paw against the board again, claws scraping the wood. "Dad," Owen whispered, "he doesn't do that unless it's something important." "I know," Garrett said softly, "but let's just settle in for now." He pulled their sleeping bags from a box, spread them in the warmest corner near a small portable heater he'd brought from the truck. The heater hummed to life, casting a weak orange glow across the peeling wallpaper. The wind howled outside, the shutters banged, snow slipped through cracks and fell in soft piles on the floor. Still, Owen offered a brave smile. "It's not that bad, Dad. Feels like camping." Garrett forced a grin. Exactly like camping. But camping didn't make his chest tighten the way this place did. Camping didn't trigger the flickers of memory, dust-filled rooms in faraway cities, broken buildings he'd been sent to clear, quiet corners where danger waited. He blinked hard, grounding himself with a slow breath, focusing on the heater's hum instead of the echoes clawing at him. Emma sat cross-legged, her sketchbook on her knees. She traced lines with numb fingers, drawing a face Garrett recognized instantly. Rebecca, smiling the way she hadn't been able to smile near the end. "Mom used to draw all the time," Emma murmured. "Drawing helps me remember her." "It helps me too," Garrett said. "Keep drawing. Keep her close." Ranger circled back to the warped floorboard. This time he barked once, sharp, insistent. Garrett stood, rubbing his temples. "Ranger, seriously, not tonight." Ranger's ears flattened. He looked back at Garrett, not defiant, concerned. Owen knelt beside the dog. "He's trying to say something, Dad. We should check." "We're cold. We're tired," Garrett said. "Tomorrow. Okay, we'll look tomorrow." Ranger backed away reluctantly, sitting between the twins as if accepting the compromise. For now, as the night deepened, the farmhouse settled with cracks and groans that sounded almost alive. A cold draft brushed across Garrett's neck. He looked around sharply. He could hear the storm pounding the roof, each gust rattling the attic door. "Everyone get some rest," he said softly. "Long day tomorrow." Emma curled into her sleeping bag, her hands still resting on Ranger's back. Owen pulled his beanie over his ears and turned onto his side. Ranger remained sitting upright long after the children drifted to sleep, watching the door, watching the windows, watching the floorboard, as if guarding them against something only he could sense. Garrett lay down but didn't close his eyes. He couldn't. Every time he tried, he saw the iron gates slamming shut. He heard Harrison's cold voice. He remembered Rebecca's hand slipping from his in that hospital bed. His throat tightened. The heater flickered once, sending shadows dancing across the cracked walls. Ranger growled low, a quiet rumble, just enough to warn that the night wasn't as still as it seemed. Garrett breathed through another wave of trembling in his hands, forced himself to stay calm. "You're here," he whispered to Ranger. "Keep them safe, just like always." Ranger lay down at last, still alert, head on his paws. eyes fixed on the darkness beyond the windows. Outside, the storm roared across Cold Creek Valley, swallowing the farmhouse in ice and wind. Inside, Garrett listened to the beating of the storm and the quiet breaths of his children, hoping that somehow, against all odds, tomorrow would hurt less than today. But deep in his gut, he knew the worst was still waiting in the shadows. Morning came slow and gray. Faint light seeped through the cracked windows, turning the frost on the glass into pale maps of white rivers and crooked mountains. Garrett pushed himself up from the cold floor, his back aching from another sleepless night. Ranger was already awake, sitting straight-backed, staring at the floorboard again. "Easy, boy," Garrett whispered. "It's just morning." But Ranger didn't relax. His ears twitched. His stare didn't break. Garrett rubbed the dog's head, then stood and nudged Owen gently with his boot. "Come on, bud. Time to get ready." Owen groaned but sat up. Emma followed, rubbing sleep from her eyes. They looked exhausted, but determined. Kids who'd already learned too much about losing and starting over. Garrett found a box of protein bars in the truck. 3 left. He gave 1 to each child, kept none for himself. "Aren't you eating?" Emma asked. "Already did." Garrett lied. She didn't believe him, but she didn't argue. They dressed in layers. Everything they owned was still in duffel bags and cardboard boxes. No dressers, no closets, no routine. Ranger watched them move around the farmhouse, still focused on that one board. Garrett knelt beside him. "What is it?" he asked quietly. "What are you trying to tell me?" Ranger whined, soft, urgent. Garrett looked at the floorboard. It was warped, older than the others. The wood grain ran in a different direction. He pressed his hand against it. It gave slightly, more than it should. A hollow sound echoed beneath. Garrett frowned. "Owen, bring me the flashlight." Owen handed it over. Garrett shone the beam along the edges of the board. There, a seam, deliberate, cut with precision. Someone had replaced this board, recently. His pulse quickened. He wedged his fingers under the edge and pulled. The board lifted. Beneath it, in a space about 3 feet deep, sat a black metal lockbox. Military grade, reinforced corners. Fasteners identical to the ones Garrett had used overseas to secure classified gear. Ranger barked twice. Sharp. Satisfied, Garrett stared at the box. "What the hell?" he whispered. Emma and Owen crowded around him. "What is it?" Owen asked. "I don't know," Garrett said. He lifted the box. Heavy, maybe 20 pounds. He set it on the floor, brushed dust and cobwebs off the top. The fasteners released with a soft metallic click. Too easy, as if they'd been opened recently, or as if they were meant to be opened now. Inside, wrapped in a faded shawl Rebecca used to wear on winter mornings, lay several items. A sealed envelope, addressed in Rebecca's handwriting. A USB drive in a protective case. Legal papers with signatures Garrett didn't recognize. A business card. Samuel Pierce, attorney at law, Helena, Montana, and at the top of the stack, a letter with Garrett's name written slowly, carefully. Emma and Owen knelt beside him. Ranger lay close, head pressed against Garrett's knee. "Dad," Emma whispered. "What is it?" Garrett's throat tightened. He brushed snow off the letter, his hands shaking, not from the cold, but from the recognition of Rebecca's looping handwriting. "It's your mom," he whispered. "She left this for me." He opened the letter. The paper was thin, creased, as if she'd folded and unfolded it many times while writing. "Garrett, if you are reading this, then what I feared has already begun." His heart stopped. The wind outside went silent. Even the storm seemed to listen. "My father will not stop until he controls everything. Our children, our home, our future. I have protected what I could. But you need help. The truth is in Samuel Pierce's hands. Do not trust my father. Do not wait. Protect Emma and Owen and trust Ranger. He knows." Garrett swallowed hard, staring at the page until the words blurred. The storm roared again, louder than any before, as if the mountains themselves were reacting to the letter. Owen gasped. "Mom knew," he said. "She knew all of this." Garrett pressed the letter to his chest, closing his eyes briefly. He felt the weight of Rebecca's warning settle deep into him, a weight heavier than grief, heavier even than fear. "She knew," Garrett said quietly, "and she tried to guide us." Ranger leaned into Garrett harder, a low rumble in his throat. Not threat, but urgency. It was as if the dog understood this moment mattered more than any before. Garrett looked around at the broken floorboards, at the storm outside, at the shadows shifting across the windows. Someone had knocked last night. Someone had scraped the siding. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't paranoia. This was a countdown. He lifted the box, holding it close. "Kids," he said, voice low but steady, "get dressed. We're leaving in an hour." Emma's eyes widened. "Where are we going?" "To find answers," Garrett said. Ranger barked once, sharp, decisive, then moved toward the door as if leading the way. Garrett looked down at the box again, at Rebecca's words, at the truth she'd buried beneath their feet. He had suspected danger. Now he knew it. Harrison Blackwood wasn't just trying to take the children. He was trying to erase Garrett entirely. And Rebecca, she had left him the first weapon in this war, a truth sealed in steel, hidden under their home, guarded by a dog who had never stopped watching over them. The storm raged harder, but Garrett no longer feared it. The real storm had only just begun. The road to Helena cut through mountains that looked like broken teeth against the winter sky. Garrett kept both hands on the wheel, eyes forward. The metal lockbox sat on the passenger seat wrapped in Rebecca's shawl. Every few miles he'd glance at it, as if it might disappear, as if this might all be some fever dream brought on by grief and exhaustion. But it was real. The letter was real. Rebecca's warning was real. In the back seat, Emma had fallen asleep against Ranger's side. Owen stared out the window at the passing pines, their branches heavy with snow. He hadn't said much since they'd left the farmhouse, just held his mother's letter in both hands like it was something sacred. The radio crackled, a weather report, another storm coming in tomorrow night. 6 to 8 inches expected. Garrett turned the volume down. His mind kept circling back to Rebecca's words. "My father will not stop until he controls everything." Harrison Blackwood, 62 years old, built an empire in commercial real estate, towers in Seattle, shopping centers in Portland, the kind of wealth that opened doors and closed mouths. Garrett had met him twice before marrying Rebecca. The first time Harrison had looked at Garrett's uniform and said, "Military, how quaint." The second time at the engagement party, Harrison had pulled Garrett aside, offered him a check for $50,000, said, "This is enough to start fresh, somewhere else without my daughter." Garrett had torn the check in half. Rebecca had chosen him anyway, and Harrison had never forgiven either of them for it. Now Rebecca was gone, and Harrison was making his move. Ranger's head appeared between the front seats, the dog's amber eyes fixed on Garrett's face. "I know," Garrett said quietly. "We're not running this time." Ranger's tail thumped once against the seat. The GPS said Helena was still 40 minutes away. Garrett's stomach was empty. He'd given the last protein bar to Owen an hour ago. The truck's gas gauge hovered just above a quarter tank. $47 was now $32. He'd used $15 for gas and tire chains. $32 between his family and nothing. Garrett pushed the thought away, focused on the road. One problem at a time. That's what his first commanding officer had taught him. You can't fight every battle at once. Pick the one in front of you and win it. Right now the battle was getting to Samuel Pierce, getting answers, getting ammunition for the war Harrison had already started. Helena appeared through the snow like a postcard from another era. Historic buildings lined the main street, brick facades, iron railings, a courthouse with a copper dome turned green with age. Mountains loomed in every direction, close enough to feel like walls. Garrett followed the GPS to a side street near the old rail district, parked in front of a 3-story building with tall windows and a wooden sign that read Pierce and Watson Attorneys at Law. The sign was old. The paint faded, but the windows were clean and the steps had been shoveled recently. Garrett cut the engine. "Stay here," he told the kids. "Keep warm. Lock the doors." "Dad," Owen said. "What if someone comes?" Garrett met his son's eyes in the rearview mirror. "Ranger's with you. Nobody gets through him." Owen nodded. Some of the fear left his face. Garrett grabbed the lockbox and stepped out into the cold. His breath clouded in front of him. His boots crunched on the salted sidewalk. Inside the building smelled of old paper and wood polish. A woman sat at a reception desk, mid-60s, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She looked up as Garrett entered. "Can I help you?" "I need to see Samuel Pierce," Garrett said. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but he'll want to see me." The woman's eyebrows rose slightly. "I'm sorry, Mr. Pierce is very busy. If you'd like to schedule, tell him Garrett Kane is here. Tell him Rebecca sent me." The woman's expression changed. Something flickered behind her eyes. Recognition. Maybe sadness. She stood without another word and disappeared down a hallway. Garrett waited, his heart hammering, his hands still shaking slightly from the adrenaline that hadn't left his system since yesterday. A minute passed, then 2. Then a door opened and a man appeared. Tall, late 60s, white hair swept back from a high forehead, Sharp blue eyes behind rimless glasses. He wore a cardigan over a dress shirt. No tie. The kind of man who'd stopped worrying about impressing people decades ago. "Mr. Kane," the man said. His voice was quiet, steady. "I was hoping you'd come sooner." Garrett stared at him. "You know who I am." "I do. My name is Samuel Pierce. Rebecca was my client and my friend." He gestured toward the hallway. "Please, come to my office." The office was lined with bookshelves, law journals, old case files. A window overlooked the street where Garrett's truck was parked. He could see Ranger's silhouette in the back seat, watching. Pierce closed the door and gestured to a leather chair. "Sit, please." Garrett sat, placed the lockbox on the desk between them. Pierce looked at it for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "She hid it well," he said. "You knew about this. I advised her to hide it somewhere only you and Ranger might find, somewhere Harrison would never think to look." Pierce sat down behind his desk, folded his hands. "How are the children? Scared, confused? We were thrown out of the estate yesterday." Pierce's jaw tightened. "He's moving faster than I expected." "What the hell is going on?" Garrett asked, his voice harder than he intended. "What did Rebecca hide from me?" Pierce opened a drawer and pulled out a thick folder, set it on the desk. "Your wife was the sole heir to her grandmother's private estate, not the Blackwood fortune, her maternal line, the Whitmore family, old money, mining and timber. Her grandmother, Eleanor Whitmore, passed away 20 years ago, left everything to Rebecca in a trust." Garrett frowned. "Rebecca never mentioned—" "She did that deliberately," Pierce interrupted. "Eleanor insisted the fortune be kept secret. She didn't trust Harrison, didn't want him using the money to control Rebecca's marriage, to control you." "How much are we talking about?" Pierce met his eyes. $200 million. The room fell silent. Garrett heard the words, understood them individually, but together they made no sense. 200 million. Rebecca had lived in modest houses, bought secondhand furniture, clipped coupons. They'd struggled to pay the mortgage some months, and she'd had $200 million the entire time. "That's impossible," Garrett said. "She lived that way intentionally," Pierce said gently. "She didn't want wealth to define your marriage, didn't want Harrison to have any leverage over you. Eleanor designed the trust that way. It couldn't be accessed until certain conditions were met." "What conditions?" Pierce slid a document across the desk. "Activation clause. Trust is to be revealed only if Rebecca's death results in coercion, manipulation, or attempted custody interference toward her husband or children." Garrett stared at the words until they blurred. "She knew," he whispered. "She knew he would try to take the kids." "Rebecca spent her final months preparing for this," Pierce said. "Every document, every instruction, every legal safeguard. She put it all in place to protect you and the twins." Emma's voice echoed in Garrett's memory. "Mom wouldn't like this place. She'd liked it fine, because they'd been together, because they'd been free." "When Hannah died," Pierce continued, "the trust activated automatically. But Harrison doesn't know about it yet. He thinks the Blackwood fortune is all there is. He thinks if he gains custody of Emma and Owen, he'll control everything." "Including them," Garrett said quietly. "Yes." Garrett leaned back in the chair, his mind racing. $200 million. It wasn't real, couldn't be real. But the documents in front of him said otherwise. "What happens now?" he asked. Pierce opened another folder. "The trust gives you full legal authority over the estate and its assets. But more importantly, it provides protections, custody protections, financial protections, witness protections if necessary." "Witness protections," Garrett repeated. "You think Harrison's dangerous?" Pierce's expression darkened. "Harrison has already filed emergency custody claims. He's hired investigators. He's building a case to paint you as unstable and financially unfit." Garrett's hands curled into fists. "He can't take them." "No," Pierce agreed. "He can't, not legally, but he will try, and he has resources you don't yet." "What do I need to do?" Pierce pulled out a slim envelope sealed with red wax. "Rebecca left this for you. Her final words about the trust. She said to give it to you when you were ready." He paused. "Are you ready?" Garrett stared at the envelope. Rebecca's handwriting again. His name in her careful script. He wasn't ready. He'd never be ready. But he took it anyway. "There's one more thing," Pierce said, his voice dropping lower. "Harrison will escalate. He's not a man who accepts defeat. You need to be prepared for that." "I've been in firefights in Kandahar," Garrett said. "I think I can handle a custody dispute." "This isn't a firefight," Pierce said quietly. "This is something worse. This is a man who sees his grandchildren as assets, who sees you as an obstacle, And who has the money to make obstacles disappear? A chill ran down Garrett's spine. Outside, Ranger barked once. Sharp. Warning. Garrett stood and moved to the window. A black SUV was rolling slowly down the street. Tinted windows. Montana plates. It passed the truck. Slowed. Then continued to the corner and turned. "You see that?" Garrett asked. Pierce joined him at the window. "I did. Same vehicle was outside the farmhouse this morning. Parked on the ridge. Watching." Pierce's jaw tightened. "It's starting." Garrett turned to face him. "Then we need to be ready." The drive back to Cold Creek took longer than it should have. Garrett kept checking the rearview mirror, looking for the black SUV. It never appeared. But that didn't mean it wasn't there. Emma and Owen were quiet in the back seat, processing, trying to understand what was happening. Ranger sat between them, alert, protective. Garrett's mind churned through everything Pierce had told him. $200 million. Rebecca had carried that secret her entire marriage. Protected it, hidden it, all to keep him safe, to keep them free. And now she was using it from beyond the grave to protect them again. His throat tightened. He missed her so badly it felt like a physical wound. The farmhouse appeared through the trees just as the sun began to set. The snow had stopped, but the temperature was dropping fast. Frost glittered on every surface like broken glass. Garrett parked the truck and helped the kids inside. The portable heater had shut off. The farmhouse was freezing. "Dad," Owen said, "I'm hungry." Garrett checked the cooler. 1 can of soup left. Some crackers. Not enough. "I'll make a fire," he said. "Get warm. Then we'll figure out dinner." Emma hugged her arms around herself. "Can we call Grandpa?" she asked quietly. "Maybe he'll let us come back." Garrett knelt in front of her. "Your grandpa made his choice, Emma. We're going to be okay, I promise." But even as he said it, he wondered if he was lying. $32, 1 can of soup, a farmhouse with holes in the roof, and a war he didn't know how to fight. Ranger nudged his hand, warm, solid. Garrett took a breath, stood, focused, one problem at a time. Right now, the problem was keeping his kids warm and fed. He built a fire in the old fireplace, found enough dry wood in the barn to last the night, heated the soup in a pot over the flames, split it 3 ways, gave the kids most of it. They ate in silence, the firelight dancing across their faces. When they were done, Emma pulled out her sketchbook, started drawing again. Owen lay down next to Ranger, the dog's warmth better than any blanket. Garrett sat by the fire and opened Rebecca's second letter, the one Pierce had given him. His hands shook as he unfolded it. "My love, if Samuel gave you this letter, then you know about the trust. I wish I could have told you while I was alive, but I was afraid my father would find out, afraid he would move before I could protect you. I know you're angry, I know you feel betrayed, but please understand, I did this because I love you. Because I knew my father would try to take everything from you after I was gone. The money isn't important. You are. Emma and Owen are. Use it to fight him. Use it to build the life we always dreamed of. And please, trust Ranger. I trained him myself these last 6 months. He knows things I couldn't tell you. He will lead you when you need it most. I love you. I'm so sorry I had to leave. Protect our children." Always. Rebecca. Garrett read the letter 3 times, then folded it carefully and placed it in his jacket pocket, next to his heart. He looked at Ranger. The dog was watching him, eyes steady, knowing. "She trained you," Garrett whispered. "Didn't she?" Ranger's tail thumped once against the floor. Garrett exhaled slowly. "Okay," he said, "show me what she taught you." The next morning came with brutal cold. Garrett woke to frost on the inside of the windows, his breath visible even inside the farmhouse. The fire had died during the night. He rebuilt it quickly, got the heater running, made instant oatmeal with the last of their supplies. $28 left. He needed to find work. Fast. After breakfast, he drove into town, left Ranger with the kids, told them not to open the door for anyone. Cold Creek was small. 1 main street, a hardware store, a diner called the Silver Pine, a grocery store, a post office that doubled as a library. Garrett went to the hardware store first. The owner was a man in his 50s, flannel shirt, suspicious eyes. "Help you?" "I'm looking for work," Garrett said. "Carpentry, handyman, anything." The man looked him up and down. "You just moved here?" "Yeah, out at the old Whitmore place." Recognition flickered across the man's face. "That's been empty for years." "Not anymore." The man studied him for a moment longer, then shook his head. "Sorry, don't have anything." Garrett tried the diner next, the grocery store. A small construction company, on the edge of town. No one was hiring, or maybe no one wanted to hire the stranger with haunted eyes and no references. By noon, Garrett was back in the truck, exhausted, frustrated. He sat in the parking lot of the Silver Pine and stared at the steering wheel. A knock on the window made him jump. An older woman stood there, mid-60s, gray hair pulled back in a bun, kind eyes. She wore an apron with the diner's logo. Garrett rolled down the window. "You look like you could use a meal," she said. "I'm fine." "That's not what I asked." Garrett met her gaze, saw something in it that reminded him of his own grandmother. Tough, but gentle. "I don't have much cash," he admitted. "Good thing I'm not asking for any," she said. "Come on, before the lunch rush." Garrett followed her inside. The diner was warm, smelled like coffee and bacon. A few locals sat at the counter. They looked up as Garrett entered, assessed him, went back to their meals. The woman gestured to a booth. "Sit." Garrett sat. She brought him coffee, eggs, toast, sausage, more food than he'd seen in days. "I'm May," she said. "I own this place." Garrett Kane. "I know. Word travels fast in a small town." She poured herself a cup of coffee and sat across from him. "You're staying at the old Whitmore farmhouse." "Yeah, with 2 kids and a dog." Garrett nodded slowly. "People talk." "They do." May sipped her coffee. "My husband was a Marine, died in Iraq, 2005. "I'm sorry." "Me too." She set her cup down. "I know what that look in your eyes means, Garrett. I've seen it before. You're running from something or to something, maybe both." Garrett didn't answer. "You need work," May continued. "I need someone to fix the walk-in freezer, replace some boards on the back deck, maybe paint the bathroom if you're feeling ambitious." "I can do that." "Good. I'll pay you 15 an hour, cash. You can start tomorrow." Garrett felt something loosen in his chest. "Thank you." May smiled. "Don't thank me yet. The freezer's a nightmare." Garrett ate slowly, savoring every bite. When he was done, May packed up 2 more meals in takeout containers. "For the kids," she said. Garrett tried to pay. She waved him off. "Get back to them," she said. "Storm's coming, tonight." Garrett drove back to the farmhouse with food and hope. It wasn't much, but it was something. The second storm hit harder than the first. Wind screamed down from the mountains. Snow fell so thick, Garrett couldn't see the barn from the porch. The temperature dropped to 10 below zero. Inside, the farmhouse groaned under the assault. But the fire was strong. The heater worked. They had food. Emma and Owen played cards by the firelight. Ranger lay between them, watchful. Garrett sat near the window, watching the storm, thinking about Rebecca's letters, about the trust, about Harrison. Somewhere out there, his father-in-law was planning his next move. Garrett needed to be ready. Around midnight, Ranger stood abruptly, ears forward, body tense. Garrett was on his feet instantly. "What is it?" The dog moved to the front door, growling low. Garrett grabbed the flashlight, checked the window. Nothing but snow and darkness. Then he saw it. Footprints. Fresh. Leading from the tree line to the side of the house. Someone had been here. Someone was watching. Garrett's pulse quickened. He grabbed the old shotgun he'd found in the barn. Checked the chamber. Empty. But he didn't need it loaded. The sight of it might be enough. He opened the door and stepped onto the porch. The cold hit him like a fist. "I know you're out there," he called into the darkness, his voice steady. "This is private property. Leave now." Silence. Just the wind. Then from the trees a figure moved. Tall, dark coat, face hidden by a hood. The figure stood there for a long moment, just watching, then turned and disappeared into the storm. Garrett stood on the porch until his hands went numb, then went back inside, locked the door, pushed a chair under the handle. Ranger sat beside him, alert. "Yeah," Garrett whispered, "I see it too." The war had begun, and this time Garrett wasn't retreating. The morning after Garrett returned from Helena, snow fell in thick, silent curtains. The kind of snow that muffled sound, that made the world feel smaller, isolated. Garrett stood on the farmhouse porch with coffee that had gone cold in his hands. He stared at the tree line where the black SUV had been parked the night before. Gone now, but not forgotten. Ranger sat beside him, ears rotating, listening to sounds Garrett couldn't hear. "They're still out there," Garrett said quietly. The dog's tail remained still. Agreement. Inside, Emma and Owen were still asleep, wrapped in sleeping bags near the fire. Safe for now. But Garrett knew that safety was temporary. The custody hearing was in 3 days. Harrison would come with everything he had, and Garrett needed to be ready. Pierce had called last night. said he was filing motions, building the case, but he'd also said something else, something that sat heavy in Garrett's gut. Harrison's desperate. Desperate men do dangerous things. Garrett finished his cold coffee, went inside, started breakfast. The woman appeared at noon. Garrett was in the barn reinforcing the doors when Ranger barked twice, his alert signal. Garrett grabbed a wrench, not a weapon, just something to hold. He stepped outside. A sedan was parked in the driveway, dark blue, civilian plates. A woman stood beside it, mid-30s, professional clothes under a heavy coat. Her breath clouded in the cold air. Her eyes kept darting to the road behind her, nervous. Garrett approached slowly, Ranger at his side. "Can I help you?" The woman turned. Her face was pale, drawn, like someone who hadn't slept in days. "Mr. Kane, Garrett Kane. That's me. My name is Grace Whitmore. I was Harrison Blackwood's executive assistant." She swallowed hard. "For 12 years, until 2 months ago." Garrett's pulse quickened. Grace glanced behind her again, then pulled a thick envelope from her bag. "I have information, things you need to see before the hearing." "What kind of information?" Grace's hands shook as she held out the envelope. "Everything. Emails between Harrison and Rebecca's oncologist. Bank transfers showing payments. Recordings of phone calls." Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. Proof that he deliberately interfered with her treatment. The world seemed to tilt. Garrett stared at the envelope like it might explode. "Why are you giving me this?" Grace's eyes filled with tears. "Because Rebecca was the only person in that house who treated me like a human being. She asked about my daughter, remembered her birthday, helped me when my ex-husband tried to take custody." A tear slipped down her cheek. "And when she died, Harrison told the staff, 'Finally, I can fix the mistakes my daughter made.' He called his own daughter a mistake." Garrett took the envelope. It was heavy, substantial. "I have a daughter," Grace continued. "She's Emma's age. I couldn't keep silent. Not when I know what he's planning to do to your children." "What is he planning?" Grace looked directly at him. "He's not going to stop with the custody hearing. He's going to destroy you. Completely. Your reputation, your stability, whatever it takes." She paused. "Be careful, Mr. Kane. Harrison doesn't lose. Ever." She got back in her car, started the engine. "Wait," Garrett called. "Will you testify?" Grace hesitated, then nodded once. "If you need me to." She drove away quickly, tires spinning slightly on the snow-packed road. Garrett stood in the cold, holding evidence that could end Harrison Blackwood, and everything changed. That night, Garrett sat at the small table in the farmhouse. Emma was drawing by firelight. Owen was reading an old National Geographic he'd found in the barn. Ranger lay between them, watchful as always. Garrett opened the envelope Grace had given him. Inside were dozens of documents, printed emails, bank statements, medical records. He started reading. The first email was from Harrison to Dr. Martin Reeves, Rebecca's oncologist, dated 18 months ago. "Martin, Rebecca's latest scans show improvement. We need to discuss adjusting her protocol. She's getting stronger, and that complicates certain family matters. Call me." Garrett's jaw tightened. The next email was Dr. Reeves' response. "Harrison, I can't ethically alter a treatment plan that's working. That's not medicine. That's..." The email chain ended there. But the bank records showed a transfer 2 weeks later. $50,000 from a Blackwood Holdings account to Dr. Reeves' personal account. Memo line consulting services. Garrett's hands started shaking. Rebecca had told him the treatment wasn't working, that the cancer was spreading despite everything, that Dr. Reeves said there was nothing more they could do. She'd believed it. She died believing her body had failed her. But it hadn't. Someone had killed her. Deliberately. Slowly. Her own father. Garrett stood abruptly. The chair scraped against the floor. Emma looked up. "Dad, you okay?" Garrett couldn't speak. His throat was closed, his vision tunneling. He walked outside, into the cold, stood in the snow in just his shirt. The rage that flooded through him was unlike anything he'd felt since Kandahar, since the IED, since watching his men die. This was different. This was personal. Ranger appeared beside him, pressed against his leg, grounding him. Garrett knelt, buried his face in the dog's fur. "He killed her," he whispered. "He killed Rebecca." Ranger didn't move, just stood there, solid, present. After a long time, Garrett stood. He went back inside, sat down, kept reading. Because rage wouldn't win this fight. Evidence would. 2 days before the hearing, the weather turned. The temperature dropped to 5 below zero. The snow stopped falling. Everything went still and brittle. The radio issued warnings. Extreme fire danger despite the cold. Humidity at record lows. Dry timber. One spark could ignite the entire valley. Avoid open flames, no outdoor burning. Report smoke immediately. Garrett listened while he worked on the farmhouse, patching holes, reinforcing windows, making it as safe as possible for what was coming, because he could feel it now. The way he'd felt ambushes in Afghanistan, that tightening in his gut, that certainty that violence was close. May came by with food, looked at him with worried eyes. "You look like you're preparing for war," she said. "I am. The hearing's not a war, Garrett." He met her gaze. "It's not the hearing I'm worried about." May didn't ask what he meant. She just squeezed his shoulder and left. That night, Garrett couldn't sleep. He sat by the fire, watching the flames, thinking about Rebecca, about how she'd smiled even when she was dying, how she'd made him promise to take care of the kids, how she'd said, "Trust Ranger. He'll know what to do." She'd known. Somehow she'd known her father would do this, and she'd prepared for it. Around 2 a.m. Ranger stood, ears forward, body rigid. Garrett was on his feet instantly. "What is it?" The dog moved to the window, stared out into the darkness. Garrett grabbed the flashlight, looked outside. At first he saw nothing. Then on the western ridge, a faint orange glow. Fire. His blood went cold. He ran to the kids, shook them awake. "Emma, Owen, we need to go, now." "What's happening?" Emma asked, still half asleep. "Fire. Coming from the ridge. We're evacuating." They dressed quickly, grabbed their bags. Garrett herded them toward the truck. But when he got there, he stopped. All 4 tires were slashed. Clean cuts. Deliberate. Someone had been here. While they slept. Garrett's mind raced. The fire wasn't an accident. This was Harrison's final move. "Dad," Owen's voice was small, frightened. Garrett knelt in front of them both. "Listen to me. You're going to walk to Maze. Follow the road. Don't stop. Don't look back. Go." "What about you?" Emma asked. Garrett looked at the barn, at the safe inside where he'd put Grace's evidence, the documents, the recordings, everything that would destroy Harrison in court. If that burned, Harrison won. "I'll be right behind you," Garrett said. "Go." Emma and Owen ran, hand in hand, disappearing into the darkness. Ranger barked once, looking at Garrett, then at the barn. "Yeah," Garrett said. "I know." They ran together. The smoke was thick when they reached the barn. The fire had jumped from the ridge, moved faster than Garrett thought possible. Already the far end of the barn was glowing orange. Inside, the air was choking. Hot. Garrett covered his mouth with his shirt, ran to the metal safe he'd bolted to the floor. He spun the combination, grabbed the documents, shoved them into a waterproof bag. Behind him, a beam cracked. Ranger barked. Sharp. Urgent. Garrett looked up. The support beam directly above him was splitting, sagging, about to fall. He dove sideways, not fast enough. The beam dropped like a hammer, but Ranger was faster. The dog hit Garrett in the chest, 70 pounds of muscle and momentum. Knocked him clear. The beam fell, caught Ranger across the shoulders, drove him to the ground. The dog yelped once, high and sharp, then went silent. Time stopped. Garrett stared at Ranger, at the massive beam pinning him, at the blood matting his fur. "No," the word came out broken. "No, no, no, not you. Not again." He dropped the bag, grabbed the beam with both hands, lifted with everything he had. His back screamed, his legs shook. But the beam moved, enough. Ranger crawled out, collapsed, breathing shallow. Garrett picked him up, all 70 pounds, held him close to his chest, left the documents, left everything. Ran. The barn exploded behind them, flames reaching into the sky like grasping fingers. Garrett didn't stop. Not when the heat scorched his back, not when the smoke choked his lungs, not when his legs gave out and he fell to his knees in the snow. He crawled, dragging Ranger, refusing to let go. He made it to the road just as the fire trucks arrived. Red lights, sirens, voices shouting. Someone pulled him away from Ranger. Someone else knelt beside the dog. Garrett tried to see, tried to get back to him, but his vision was fading. Gray at the edges. The last thing he heard before he passed out was a voice saying, "The dog's alive. Get the vet, now." Garrett woke in a hospital bed. His throat felt like sandpaper. His back was bandaged. His hands were wrapped in gauze. Pierce was sitting in a chair beside him. "Welcome back," the lawyer said quietly. "Ranger," Garrett croaked. "Alive. At the veterinary clinic in Helena. Broken rib. Deep laceration on his shoulder. Burns on his paws. But he'll recover." Pierce leaned forward. "He saved your life." Garrett closed his eyes, felt tears burn behind his eyelids. The kids, safe with May, they're fine. The evidence, Pierce smiled slightly, held up the waterproof bag. The firefighters found it, 30 feet from the barn. You must have thrown it when you went back for Ranger. He paused. You chose the dog over the documents. Of course I did. Good, Pierce said, because that's exactly what Rebecca would have wanted. The custody hearing was held 4 days later. Garrett sat at the defendant's table, his hands still bandaged, his back aching, but he was there. Emma and Owen sat with May in the gallery. They waved at him. He waved back. Harrison sat across the aisle, 3 lawyers flanking him. He looked smaller somehow, older. When his eyes met Garrett's, something flickered in them. Not triumph, fear. Judge Catherine Morrison entered. Everyone stood. The hearing began. Harrison's lawyer presented their case. The same arguments: financial instability, PTSD, dangerous living conditions. But this time she added something new. Your Honor, we believe Mr. Kane deliberately endangered the children. The fire that destroyed his property was due to negligence. Faulty wiring, improper heating. He's lucky those children survived. Garrett's jaw tightened. Pierce stood. Your Honor, that fire was arson. The state fire marshal's report, which I'm submitting now, confirms it. Someone cut the fuel line to Mr. Kane's generator. Someone slashed his vehicle tires to prevent evacuation. This wasn't negligence. This was attempted murder. The courtroom went silent. Pierce continued. Furthermore, we have evidence that Mr. Blackwood has been conducting a campaign of harassment and intimidation against Mr. Kane. Surveillance, threats, and now arson. Harrison's lawyer stood quickly. Your Honor, that's a baseless accusation, is it? Pierce pulled out a folder. We have testimony from a private investigator who was hired by Mr. Blackwood to follow Mr. Kane. The investigator quit when he was asked to create problems for the family. He's willing to testify. Pierce slid documents across to the judge. We also have financial records showing Mr. Blackwood paid Dr. Martin Reeves, his daughter's oncologist, to alter her treatment protocol. Deliberately. To keep her weak. To prevent her from fighting for custody of her own children. The courtroom erupted. Harrison shot to his feet. That's a lie. Is it? Pierce looked directly at him. Then explain the $50,000 transfer to Dr. Reeves. Explain the emails. Explain why your daughter's cancer suddenly became untreatable after months of improvement. Judge Morrison slammed her gavel. Order, everyone sit down. The room quieted. Pierce called his first witness. The court calls Grace Whitmore. Grace walked to the stand. She looked small, frightened, but determined. She was sworn in. Pierce approached gently. Ms. Whitmore, you were Mr. Blackwood's executive assistant for 12 years. Is that correct? Yes. Can you tell the court what you witnessed during Rebecca Kane's illness? Grace took a breath. Then she told them everything. About the emails she'd seen, the phone calls she'd overheard, the private meetings between Harrison and Dr. Reeves, about Harrison saying after Rebecca died, finally I can fix the mistakes my daughter made, about the instructions to hire investigators, to build a case against Garrett, to make him look unstable, about the conversation where Harrison said, if he won't give up the children willingly, we'll take them by force. By the time she finished, Harrison's lawyers were frantically whispering to him. Harrison himself sat frozen, staring at Grace like she'd driven a knife between his ribs. She had. Pierce called his next witness, Dorothy Winters, who testified about how Garrett had saved Tommy, about his courage and selflessness. Then May Wilson, who testified about Garrett's character, his work ethic, his love for his children. Then the fire marshal, who confirmed the arson, who said the fire was deliberately set to destroy evidence and endanger lives. Finally, Pierce played Rebecca's video. The courtroom fell silent as her face appeared on the screen. Thin, pale, but her eyes were clear and fierce. Dad, if you're seeing this in court, you've done exactly what I feared. Garrett is a good man. He's the father our children need. Not you. Her voice broke. You taught me about power, but Garrett taught me about love. The children need love, not control. She looked directly into the camera. I'm sorry I couldn't stand up to you while I was alive, but I'm protecting them now. Garrett, fight. I love you. I believe in you. The video ended. Emma was sobbing in the gallery. Owen buried his face in May's shoulder. Harrison sat with his head in his hands. Judge Morrison removed her glasses, wiped her eyes. After a long moment, she spoke. Mr. Blackwood, stand. Harrison stood. He looked like he'd aged 10 years. I've heard enough. Not only am I denying your custody petition, I'm ordering a full investigation into your conduct. If these allegations are proven, you'll face criminal charges. She turned to Garrett. Mr. Kane, full custody is awarded to you. Permanently. Mr. Blackwood is prohibited from contacting you or the children except through supervised visitation arranged by this court, and only if Mr. Kane agrees. The gavel struck. It was over. Garrett walked out of the courthouse into winter sunlight. Emma and Owen ran to him. He knelt and wrapped his arms around them both. "We're safe," Emma whispered. "We're safe," Garrett said. Pierce approached, extended his hand. Rebecca would be proud. Garrett shook it. Couldn't speak past a lump in his throat. They drove to the veterinary clinic in Helena. Ranger was in a kennel in the recovery room, bandaged, stitched, but his tail started wagging the moment he saw Garrett. The vet smiled. "He's been waiting for you." Garrett opened the kennel, sat on the floor, let Ranger climb into his lap despite the size difference. Emma and Owen crowded in, all four of them tangled together. "Good work," Garrett whispered to the dog. "Best work." Ranger licked his face once, then rested his head on Garrett's shoulder. They stayed like that for a long time. A family, broken but healing, scarred but together, safe. 3 months later, the farmhouse stood rebuilt, new roof, new walls, windows that actually closed, a porch that didn't sag. Inside, Emma's drawings covered the walls. Owen's science projects cluttered the kitchen table. Ranger lay on his dog bed near the fire, moving slower now, gray around the muzzle, but his eyes were still sharp, still watching. The Frostline Foundation had opened 2 weeks ago, 5 cabins dotted the property, built for veterans who needed a place to heal. A training facility stood near the barn, where dogs learned to be more than pets, to be partners, saviors. 15 veterans had already come through. 8 dogs had been trained and placed with families who needed them. It was working. May ran the kitchen. Dorothy Winters volunteered with intake. The whole valley had pitched in, building something that mattered. One afternoon, Garrett received a letter, handwritten, Harrison's distinctive script. Garrett sat on the porch to read it. "Garrett, I was wrong. About you. About everything. Rebecca deserved better from me. So did you and the children. I don't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I ask for a chance to know my grandchildren. Not as someone who owns them, but as a grandfather who finally learned what matters, if you'll allow it." Harrison Garrett folded the letter, sat for a long time. Emma came outside, sat beside him. "What is it?" "Your grandfather, he wants to visit." Emma was quiet. "Then what do you think?" "I think your mom would want us to give him a chance." "Then we should." 2 weeks later, Harrison arrived, alone. No driver, no lawyers. Just an old man in a simple coat, carrying books for Emma, a telescope for Owen. It was awkward at first. Then Harrison asked Emma about her drawings. She showed him the portrait of Rebecca she'd finished last week. Harrison stared at it for a long time, then broke down, right there at the kitchen table. "You draw just like your mother," he whispered. Emma hugged him. Garrett watched from the doorway, Ranger beside him. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. That evening, after Harrison left, Garrett walked up to the ridge where they'd scattered Rebecca's ashes. The sun was setting, painting the valley in gold and red. Ranger limped beside him, refusing to be left behind. Garrett knelt at the small stone marker they'd placed. "We made it," he said quietly. "The kids are safe. Harrison's trying, the foundation's helping people." He pulled Rebecca's wedding ring from his pocket, the one he'd found buried in the snow 2 weeks ago, the one he thought was lost forever. He placed it in a small waterproof box, buried it next to the marker along with the locket she'd worn, the one with all their photos. "Thank you," he whispered, "for everything, for the letters, for Ranger, for believing I could do this." His voice broke. "I miss you, every day, but we're okay. We're healing." Ranger pressed against his leg, warm, solid. They sat there as the sun disappeared behind the mountains, then walked home together. Down the trail to the farmhouse where light glowed in the windows, where smoke rose from the chimney, where Emma and Owen were probably arguing about whose turn it was to set the table. Home. Behind them, the valley settled into twilight. Ahead, the future waited, uncertain but possible. They'd survived the worst. Now they could build the best. Epilogue. Garrett's voice quiet and steady over images of the foundation. Veterans arriving with hollow eyes. Dogs being trained with patience and purpose. Emma teaching art class to other kids who'd lost parents. Owen helping in the kennels, gentle with animals twice his size. I came to Cold Creek to hide, from a choice I made in Afghanistan, from the guilt of men who died on my orders, from the belief that I'd failed at the only thing that mattered. I thought peace meant running, meant silence, meant disappearing into a place where no one knew my name. Rebecca knew different, and she taught Ranger to show me. Sometimes a miracle doesn't come as thunder from heaven. Images of Ranger at different moments, refusing to leave the floorboard, tracking Tommy through the snow, pushing Garrett out from under the falling beam. It comes as a warning you almost ignored, as a truth buried for years, as a woman who loved enough to plan for after she was gone, as a dog who refused to quit. The video testimony of Rebecca plays again, her thin face, her fierce eyes. In Afghanistan, I gave an order that killed 3 men. I thought that failure defined me, made me unworthy of duty, unworthy of being a father. Rebecca showed me different. Duty isn't perfection. It's showing up. It's fighting when the fight finds you. It's staying when leaving would be easier. Images of the foundation now. Thriving, veterans laughing around a fire. Dogs graduating from training. Families reunited. The Frostline Foundation has helped over 200 veterans, trained 50 service dogs, saved lives will never count. But more than that, it gave us purpose. It gave us home. Maybe that's how God works most often, not by removing our pain, but by placing faithful companions beside us and giving us the strength to honor them. Images of Garrett, Emma, and Owen on the farmhouse porch, Ranger beside them, older, grayer, but still watching. Every day we choose between silence and truth, between running and standing, between fear and love. Those choices echo through generations. The camera pulls back slowly. The farmhouse, the foundation buildings, the valley stretching out below, mountains rising behind, a life rebuilt, a family restored, a promise kept. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Tell us in the comments. What moment made you want to stay? Subscribe for more stories of loyalty, faith, and redemption. Because these stories matter. Your story matters. May God bless and keep you. May He guide your steps when the path is uncertain. May He place faithful companions on your road when you need them most. And may you find the courage to stand when standing is the hardest choice. The final shot, Garrett's hand on Ranger's head. The dog looking up at him. Emma and Owen on either side. The sun setting behind them. A family, scarred, healed. Together. Amen.